We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to the Monday edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix and this is the Monday Mashup. How is everybody post-eclipse America, post-eclipse planet Earth? That was a pretty amazing eclipse. Lots of stunning images have emerged in the aftermath. And, you know, because we live in a digital age, a clearly digital age, we're able to capture these things and pass them around very quickly. And the level of creativity with the eclipses is pretty cool. I mean, everything from looking at eclipses through dark prismatic glasses to photoshopping the eclipse to using the shadows and images of the eclipse projected onto things like leaves, and people capturing the very unique imagery of the eclipse. So, from an artistic and creative standpoint, I think it was a success. Here on this side of things, we did a 2-hour show, and I had, let's see, who would I have? Yesterday I had Melody Scott Zindel from Boulder, and we talked about some of the astrology around the eclipse, some of the post-astrology around the eclipse. We looked at Jupiter in Gemini, which is coming soon to a theater near you, and the Gemini Sun and the Gemini Moon as a precursor to Jupiter in Gemini, which is headed your way, and it is going to be Jupiter in Taurus has been. I think Jupiter in Taurus has been great, to be honest with you. It's given us a significant amount of grounding. And I got to tell you, during the Grand Earth Trine, I felt terrific. I absolutely loved it, because I am an Earth Sun, and I do have my Saturn in an Earth sign. So that Grand Earth Trine gave me a lot of grounding. And I tell you, when we feel grounded, really grounded, we are different people. And part of what happens with the dislocation of our attention, our psyches, in a post-traumatic, stressed out and disoriented society is that rarely, if ever, do we feel truly grounded. We're always bouncing like a pinball from the bumper to bumper of events in our lives. So to feel truly, truly grounded and capable of making clear and balanced and well thought out and resonant choices is a bit of a luxury in a lot of ways, because the way things are stacked right now is that we're all running to pretty much catch up with ourselves. I mean, unless we're on the inner circle of the Facebook IPO and you're a billionaire today, or you have substantial familial wealth, generational wealth, you're scrambling. You're scrambling to make ends meet. You're scrambling to keep up with schedules. You're scrambling to live in one world while another world is emerging. If you're somebody like me, you're scrambling to put your fingers in the dike to keep the leaks from, cracking and exploding and taking the whole thing down with a deluge. So we're all right now in kind of a frantic mode in some ways. And it's the nature of our times. It's the acceleration of our times. So if you can slow down a little bit and take time out. Here in California, I've never done this, but there's a place that does a Vipassana retreat, which is free. You can go away for 10 days, and you can do this Vipassana retreat. And it's a silent meditation for 10 days, and you don't have to pay a single cent. Everybody I know that's done this thing has really had their lives changed in a very big way. So maybe that's, if we can carve out 5 to 10 days of our precious time to not speak and slow our thoughts down, maybe that would help us. But then we would throw ourselves right back into the whirling and swirling, combustible and generating forces of the matrix. So speaking of combustible and generating forces, NATO, the NATO thing is really going off today. You can go to Usstream, and if you go to usstream.com, you can type in NATO, and there's about 3 or 4 channels where you can get live streams. That means people with their iPhones are out streaming the event. Apparently, a few of the We Are Change people, Luke Rudkowski, I think he was the guy that got arrested for dancing, right, at the Washington Memorial. Anyway, they got pulled over yesterday by about 8 police cars in Chicago, and had their computer smashed. So that was captured on Usstream. So if you want to get a flavor of what's happening in Chicago live, there's about 3 Usstream channels, and you can go there and you can check it out and see what's going on, because quite frankly, the mainstream media is not going to give you that information. They're not going to give you those pictures. You're not going to see what's on the street, albeit it will be chaotic, and it is chaotic, but it would give you at least a glimmer as to what's happening. And, today really is going to be the peak, I think, for the NATO protest. And what's going to be interesting is what happens afterwards. What happens after, because you've got all these people, right, that have descended upon Chicago to protest. And NATO ends today. Where are those people going to go? Where are they going to go? This is where I think it's going to get really interesting, because if the flanks of the security for NATO have diminished or dwindled, you still got a lot of people on the streets looking for action in Chicago. So this could last well into the weekend. In fact, we may not have seen anything yet when it comes to what's happening in the streets of Chicago. Now, if you've noticed any of the footage or looked at any of the pictures, there basically are 2 uniforms. There is one where people are wearing the light blue helmets, and the light blue helmets are NATO/UN helmets, and they've got patches on their arms with 4 stars. And those patches are indicative of NATO/UN peacekeeping forces, which theoretically are illegal on the soil of the United States. And then you have the Chicago PD, and they've got their helmets and their unis and all of their various protection and security devices and tools and implements, i.e. billy clubs and sticks. Some of the pictures, if you can cruise around on the internet, some of the pictures are startling. I mean, there is a war going on in the streets of Chicago right now. I mean, people are getting beaten down. So, this is the summer that we are getting ready to stare down, folks. This is going to be the summer of significant and major protest. And it's going to be interesting because what are we talking about? We're talking about less than 50 days the Olympics in London are going to take place. And that's going to be interesting because the amount of security that they have put into place in London is beyond anything Orwell probably could have imagined. And, yeah, the London Olympics, the Rothschild Mega Ritual Olympics. Hopefully I can get Ellis back on the show before the Olympics, just so we can get the latest update from the master numerologist himself, Ellis Taylor. So here we are. It's Monday, the day after the eclipse. How was everybody's eclipse? Did you enjoy it? Was it powerful? Did you have powerful dreams? If you want to share any of your experiences or insights with the eclipse, 347-308-8995. We had a caller on earlier, and they went away, 410 area code. If you want to come back on, please do that. I just need to do a little bit of a ramp up and kind of a mini rant before I get into the rest of the show. But if you do want to call in about the eclipse, 347-308-8995. I was walking by downtown in my little tiny place where I live. And there's a little town square here. And so I'm walking down the street, and I see this car. And it's like a Toyota, I think. It's a station wagon. And it's got a wrap on it. And the wrap is Navtec, Navteq, Navtec. And I'm looking at this car, and it's got some very unusual equipment kind of attached to it, like a very large, what looks like to me a listening device, and it had small like antennae that were attached to each hubcap. I mean, this car was literally a satellite transceiver on four wheels. And I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I looked at it. There was a lot going on in this car. And that kind of circled it a little bit, and it had, had Michigan state government license plates. I'm asking myself, what the hell is a Michigan state car doing in a small town on the bay, on the edge of the bay in California? What's that about? So I went home and I looked up Navtec, and they are apparently some kind of like real-time intelligence gathering company. And they say they use it for GPS maps and stuff like that, but it's, their list of clients is fairly interesting. Even though they're not completely listed, they tell what industries that they gather information for. And it's just like, I noticed this car. Now, it could be really benign. There could be places of interest in terms of, shopping. And, well, here's, lovely little Point Richmond. Isn't it quaint? Isn't it cute? Oh, here is the Baltic restaurant. It's a landmark. Maybe it's that, okay? Maybe it's one of those things. Maybe it's not. But I was the only person that walked around it and looked at it and said, what is this doing here? Who are they and what are they doing? And it's one of those moments where you look around and you say, hey, am I nuts? Am I paranoid? Why isn't anybody else questioning the fact that there's a car in our midst that is literally just grabbing images and sounds and who knows what else with this thing? And, and what kind of emissions is that car putting out as you walk by it? I mean, it's literally like a roving cell phone tower, I think. So anyway, that was my Monday morning. Other than that, though, it's pretty beautiful here, and just a few chemtrails in the sky. They lightened up during the eclipse, which was, I guess, a good thing. Why not? We'll honor that. So, getting back to Jupiter and Gemini, we talked a little bit about this yesterday with Melody. And Jupiter and Gemini is going to be frantic. frantic. It's going to be so much information that you won't be able to separate the wheat from the chaff or the forest from the trees. Information overload. One of the themes of Jupiter and Gemini will be, who can you trust? Rumors will be wild. And the amount of movement that's going to take place in people's lives will be significant. One of the things that I am fairly dedicated to here on the show, and I'd like to do more of, and that's finding solutions to how we can stay healthier. And I love herbs, and I love minerals and supplements, and these really wonderful things that can improve our lives that are not legislated out of existence quite yet. And I am a big advocate of medicinal marijuana, and particularly cannabis leaf juicing. So here's a nice story. I'm going to give you a good story here to start your week. This is from the Natural Society, naturalsociety.com. And the story here is marijuana oil helps 3-year-old son beat cancer. So here we go. What would you do if your 3-year-old son was stricken with brain cancer? Most parents wouldn't think twice about bringing their child to a mainstream doctor, only to undergo modern-day cancer treatments such as chemotherapy. This is what one father, Mike Hyde from Montana, did when his 3-year-old was diagnosed with brain cancer. But the father doesn't attribute his son's victory against cancer with the use of chemotherapy or any other mainstream treatment. The dad actually says marijuana oil is what made the boy beat cancer. While the story isn't recent, it is one that everyone should hear about. In May 2010, radiologists at Community Medical Center in Missoula, Montana, discovered a stage 4 brain tumor in a 20-month-old boy named Cash. Shortly after the tumor was discovered, the toddler was brought to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah, where he was placed in intensive care. It was recommended that Cash receive 3 cycles of chemotherapy, only to be followed by another 3 cycles of high-dose chemotherapy with stem cell rescue. The boy would also receive max amounts of anti-nausea pharmaceutical medications. After his first round of high-dose chemo in August 2010, he no longer ate anything, and this went on through September. He was getting worse and worse. By the end of September, he was so sick he no longer was able to take feedings into his G-tube. His stomach lining was burnt from the chemotherapy. It was no longer processing anything. It was fried. I asked doctors if there was anything else we can give him, and they said, we're giving him max amounts of all anti-nausea medication we can give him. They basically told me this was as good as it was going to get. I told them it was unacceptable, I said. The result of the chemotherapy were less than effective, as with most chemotherapy treatments, and the anti-nausea drug cocktail was causing numerous side effects. These results caused Hyde to pull his son off medication and begin secretly administering 0.3 milligrams of marijuana oil through his son's G-tube. Hyde says that once he began with the marijuana oil, his son started eating again, and his quality of life completely changed for the better. The father was told that it was a miracle that his son began sitting up and laughing again. Doctors told us he was not going to make it. He was on life support for 40 days and was in a medically induced coma. They said he would have brain damage and his lungs would fail. But I knew the medicine, marijuana oil, was in his body, and that helped him. It helped to rebuild his stomach lining, his liver, and his lungs. He walked out of the ICU in mid-December. The nurses and doctors called him a Christmas miracle, says Hyde. Was this one of the few cases where chemo ended up working? Perhaps, but this mainstream treatment nearly killed the young boy in the process. It brought him to the edge of life, and I wouldn't have stepped in when I did. And if I wouldn't have stepped in when I did, he wouldn't be here right now, Hyde explained. The marijuana oil was the best pain drug available for Cashy, as well as a neuroprotectant, antioxidant, and antibacterial. I know it saved Cash's life. Seeing how marijuana oil helped the young boy to survive isn't surprising that the benefits of medical marijuana are vast, with the plant even able to fight cancer. The point of this story is to recognize that alternative solutions do exist, can be utilized. The marijuana and cancer relationship is very real, and this is just one of many cases that proves it. The other case of this was the young girl in Oakland, and it was she had brain tumors. She was 6 months old, and she got cannabis leaf juice from her parents, and she recovered as well. So the moral of the story here is that marijuana has a very profound impact on cancer cells, and the cancer industry in this country is just out of control, and it is an industry. And I've done this before. I did this on my website. I did it on Facebook one day, and I looked at the amount of money that was spent on cancer research from the mid '60s. I got these figures, from the internets, and the amount of money that has been spent on cancer research is completely off the charts. I mean, you can't even begin to imagine billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. We're almost in the area of trillions of dollars on cancer research. And has cancer gone down? No. Cancer is rampant. It's one of the biggest scams in modern history. Now, if you've got it, it's a whole nother ball of wax, And my mother had cancer. My father, theoretically died of cancer, so I've been around it. And my mother amazingly lived, and she's one of the few people that I know that went through chemotherapy and radiation and survived, which says a lot about my mother, I think. My father, I don't know what, he did not make it. But I think really at the end of the day, he didn't want to make it either. But the moral of the story, boys and girls, is that the cancer industry is a scam. It's a total scam. Cancer is a virus. It's bacteria and a virus. And it can be beaten by the simplest means. Now, not everybody has been able to cure themselves organically. Probably the most famous case of not being able to cure oneself organically of cancer was Harry Hoxsey, who through his Hoxsey method did help cure a lot of cancer patients. However, he was not one of them. So even organic and natural methods are not 100%. And there are a lot of factors that come into play here in terms of, where it is, how advanced it is, what you're using to treat the cancer with. One of my clients, God bless him, he had his wife came down with cancer, and they decided to treat it themselves and go the natural route, and it didn't work. Because sometimes your ticket is just, it's up. And the most powerful natural remedies in the world just may not save you, and that's just the way it is. What was interesting about his case and his beloved wife's case was that both of them astrologically had Pluto opposing their moons. Really fascinating. And one of the things that I took away from that was like one of them was going to go. That was really kind of the plan. One of them was going to go. One of them was going to leave because the Pluto moon opposition does represent separation. And they both had it. They both, what are the odds of two people finding each other, marrying each other, and both of them have Pluto moon opposition in their charts? And by the way, they were conjunct, even though they were born in different years. They were separated by about 4 or 5 years. So, but if push came to shove, what would you go with? Chemo, radiation, or would you go the natural route? My good friend, the captain, came down with liver cancer. And for him, it was, I think, a pretty advanced case. He had he had what did he have? He had Hep 3, hepatitis A, hepatitis B. I think he had Hep B or C. It was one of the more serious versions of hepatitis. And he'd lived with that most of his life, and I think that had degraded his quality of life with his cancer. But with his liver. But he made a decision to essentially go. He didn't even really go the natural route. He found out he had cancer, and really just about 8 months later, he was gone. And he had plenty of cannabis to help him through that time. So, it's not a given that if you go the natural route that you're gonna get through it. It's just not. But I wanted to share with you a good story, a feel-good story of a child that survived not only cancer, but survived the oppressive gauntlet of the modern medical establishment, aka the AMA. Okay, what else do we have here? On yesterday's show, I talked a little bit about Catherine Forrest. She is a Chief Justice. She's a judge on the Second Court Circuit, which is based out of, I believe, Virginia. And she basically struck down the NDAA. And again, this is not getting a lot of press in the mainstream media. So this is from Zero Hedge, and this gives you kind of an example of who she is and what she did. Okay, so here's the piece. It says, sometimes the greatest deeds are done by those who are just doing their jobs, like Judge Catherine Forrest, who last week struck down the indefinite detention provision of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA. It would be all too easy in this age of ever-encroaching authoritarianism in America for a judge ruling on a matter like this to just go with the government line and throw water over the plaintiffs. After all, telling truth to power has consequences. Forrest was appointed by Obama, but after this ruling, one wonders whether she is about to meet a career dead end. Power, especially narcissistic power, does not like being told uncomfortable truths. Everything about this case is shameful. It should be obvious to anyone who can read the Constitution that indefinite detention without trial, just like assassination without trial, something else that Obama and his goons have no problem practicing and defending, is hideously and cruelly unconstitutional. It defecates upon both the words and the spirit of the document. It is directly and completely in contravention to the Fifth Amendment. Here's the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Those are some of the most important words ever written. It is shameful that this law was proposed. It is shameful that any legislator would vote for it, and it is shameful that the president would sign it into law, albeit with a flimsy signing statement claiming that he would not use the indefinite detention provision against American citizens. More shameful still is the fact that when this challenge was brought, that the Obama administration tried to dismiss it on a technicality. They tried to make the case that because none of the plaintiffs were to be indefinitely detained, that they could not challenge the law. Judge Forrest's investigation of this claim was revealing. This is from Naomi Wolf. Forrest asked repeatedly in a variety of different ways for the government attorneys to give her some assurance that the wording of Section 1021 could not be used to arrest and detain people like the plaintiffs. Finally, she asked for assurance that it could not be used to sweep up a hypothetical, peaceful, best-selling, nonfiction writer who had written a hypothetical book criticizing U.S. foreign policy. I believe that's Naomi Wolf. Along the lines that the Taliban might agree with. In other words, again and again, the two lawyers said directly that they could not or would not give her those assurances. In other words, this back and forth confirmed what people such as Glenn Greenwald, the Bill of Rights Defense Committee, the ACLU, and others have been shouting since January. The section was knowingly written in order to give the president these powers, and his lawyers were sent into that courtroom precisely to defeat the effort to challenge them. Forrest concluded at the hearing on this motion, the government was unwilling or unable to state that these plaintiffs would not be subject to indefinite detention under Section 1021. Plaintiffs are therefore at risk of detention, of losing their liberty potentially for many years. Very simply, it is now obvious that the NDAA was written not to deal with terrorists or potential terrorists. After all, the government has evidence that an individual or group is planning to commit a terrorist act, and they do not need an indefinite detention provision. All they need is to arrest such individuals and prove beyond reasonable doubt before a jury of their peers that a crime has been committed. This is how justice works. If the evidence exists, you can bring a successful prosecution. After all, if they do not have the evidence to prove that a group or individual was planning to commit an act of terrorism, then they have no business arresting them or charging them with any offense. Suspects, lest we forget, are innocent until proven guilty. So, Catherine Forrest has done something here of note. Let us all clap for somebody who has had the cojones to finally stand up and say no. To stand in the face of gale force winds, of pressure, to shout, to quietly affirm, not even shout into those winds, no, this is not legal. So let us pray for this woman and hope that she can continue to do her job. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the days to come, because the administration is going to have to answer to this. They're going to have to appeal it. And if they appeal it, well, it's going to be open warfare in the courts. And if this thing gets struck down, if it goes to the Supreme Court and it gets struck down, then they're going to have a very hard time passing this kind of legislation ever again. So you can find out more about that on zerohedge.com. And congratulations to Chief Justice Forrest. Not Chief Justice. Justice Forrest, not Chief Justice. It is 10:33 here in pretty sunny California on the edge of the bay. I'm going to play a little bit of music. This is from our good friend of the show and my tech producer, Erica Mermuse. This is one of her wonderful pieces of music. And we're going to play a little of this here at the bottom of the hour. I'm going to jump into the chat room, and when I come back, I'll be wrapping up the back 40, as they say, for the Monday Mashup. Here's Erica. That is Erica Mermuse, the multifaceted, multi-talented Erica Mermuse. And what a wonderful piece of music to start the post-eclipse era on planet Earth. We were just in the chat room, or I was just in the chat room, hanging out, and I proposed this theory or this scenario. What if you woke up? Because we see these TV shows, right, where like Life on Mars with Harvey Keitel, and the guy is in present day, quote unquote, America, and then he wakes up in 1970s America. There's like a jump in the timeline or something. So what if you woke up tomorrow and the world is pretty much the same, except your definition of assholes were gone. They were just gone from the world. You know, it'd be your definition, maybe my definition. So the aggregate definition of assholes, if they were just gone, and we looked around and was like, well, where are they? Where'd they go? It's gone. And we all had to kind of explore that together, right? Well, what happened to these people, and what do we do now? And then as we sat there and we went off with our checklist, we're going, okay, well, they're gone. Wow, they're really gone. And what was left was really an aggregate of a harmonic that could live together. It was all based on a resonant harmonic that a group of people shared together. And there could be a derivation of the harmonic. Like it could go a few degrees, up or a few degrees down, but it would never tilt into the danger zone. And it was all, again, kind of a composite of each individual's thoughts and feelings and actions, their conscience, their soul. And it was registered and essentially matched up with other people, other souls that shared the same harmonic. Now, that doesn't mean we'd all have to be the same, because we can be very different. But there would be a resonance and a heart frequency that would allow us to stay in a synchrony where we could explore our differences without exploiting one another. Because in the same harmonic, we'd be incapable of exploiting one another. And so, therefore, we could begin to trust and surrender and open and live in a world where we could accelerate quite quickly our development. Now, some people say, it's like weight training. Why does weight training work? Well, weight training works because there's muscle resistance, right? There's muscle resistance. But that's just one form of staying fit. There are other forms of staying fit. It's not just weight training. We've been in muscle resistance for well over 3,000 years. So maybe there's a different form. And maybe there is a form that's based a lot less on resistance. In a synchronized harmonic, we get to explore that. Maybe it's like Tai Chi, or Qigong. Maybe that's what it's about. And it's no longer about resistance, but about tapping into the energy fields, the chi lines of the planet. Wouldn't that be cool? But I think what would happen is that there would be like one or two people that you kind of liked that were gone, and you're like, oh man, well, he was an asshole, but he was interesting. I'm kind of bummed that he's gone. It's like, oh well, but then you probably get over it, because then you see two other people that you really like. So, oh man, I'm glad you made the cut, dude. High five. You're on the home team. So you probably quickly get over the marginal people. Like Bill Maher, probably one of the, Bill Maher's an asshole. Sorry, he's an asshole. He wouldn't make the cut. He's just a flat-out asshole. I'm trying to think of somebody who's kind of like a borderline asshole. Would be, okay, they didn't make it, but, you know, they were kind of, who would that person be? I'm trying to think. I can't really think of anybody because in my book it's pretty clearly defined. You know, okay, Willie Brown, who was the mayor of San Francisco, might fit into that category, but I don't know. If he were gone, I wouldn't care. Wouldn't mind. See ya. By the way, Willie Brown is one of the skeleton keys to 9/11. If you don't know who he is or what I'm talking about, he was the mayor of San Francisco, and he came out just days after 9/11 and he said to the press, you can find it, it's on the internet, he got a phone call from somebody telling him not to fly on 9/11. A lot of people speculated it was Condoleezza Rice because of the relationship they had while she was at Stanford. He was mayor of San Francisco. So he wouldn't make it. I don't think he'd make it. What about a guy like Mark Cuban, who owns the Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks? He might be an asshole. Would I be bummed if he didn't make it? Not really. I'm trying to think personally, people in my life. I don't hang out with assholes. So I've divorced myself from assholes. So it'd be doubtful that borderline people in my life would I'd care much about. But it's an interesting concept, and maybe we can, without being too judgmental now, put our energy and efforts towards something like that. So let's reward the good people of this universe, of this plane of existence that we live in. Let's champion people that we care about and believe in. And let's, this is the dawn of a new day. Let us support one another in any way that we can. I think that's probably the best course of action at any time. It's something that I've done my best to live with in my life. I've got Jupiter and Sagittarius in the first house. So I want to help people. I want to support people. It's important to me. And, I've had the hardest time in my life being supported when people want to help me. Even to this day, when people, send me the odd donation to my website, I find it really hard. I'm getting better at it, but it's hard for me to accept that donation sometimes. And yet, what I've learned about Jupiter and Sagittarius, and this is really coming out of the mouth of one of the astrological masters, Dane Rudhyar, he talks about Jupiter and Sag as being the type of alignment which is very much related to the kind of the religious orthodoxy of priesthood and kind of the old school style of religious economics, which would be tithing, and that people with Jupiter and Sagittarius would be granted gifts and sort of donations and things like that based on the expression of their Jupiter, which would be in the form or in the realm of religious and spiritual and public service. And I just read this a few weeks ago. This is Dane Rudhyar's interpretation. So when I read that, it made me feel a little more okay about being able to receive on that level. Because I've been able to do that and share that with other people in my life pretty easily. So as we get older, we get better at these things, hopefully. But understanding your Jupiter, I think, is really, really vital, extremely vital. And again, with the Jupiter shift in Gemini coming up, it's good to know where Jupiter exists. Where does it live? Where does it live in your chart? How will Jupiter impact your Jupiter? Jupiter, for me, is going to begin to oppose my natal Jupiter, well, that's not, that won't begin. So it's a ways away. I'm going to have a Jupiter-Jupiter opposition. In 2013, I'll have Jupiter trining Mercury, Jupiter trining Venus, Jupiter trining the Moon. Well, I'll have a pretty good Jupiter run. I'm looking forward to that. It's 10:48, and we've got about 12 minutes left in today's show. Wednesday, I've got Navigating the Astrological Matrix, and Friday, I promise I will have a guest lined up for you on Friday. I heard a really great interview with Mary Sean Young. It was on Red Ice Radio. It was a terrific interview. I highly recommend it. If you haven't found it, go listen to it. She just lays it out there. This woman has serious cojones. Another one. And of course, if you look at her her career as an actress, she stars in some very interesting films. I was talking with my buddy Rob Dew, who teaches movies and cinema down in Southern California. We were talking last night about her film career and some of the movies that she's been in. Of course, one of her first movies was Blade Runner. And then she also was in Dune. So two of the most significant science fiction films of all time, Sean Young, now known as Mary Sean Young, has roles. And she was in this movie with James Woods called The Boost. And that's when she kind of went nuts. And that's when people think or believe that her programming was starting to unravel, because there are people that are in this world who believe that Sean Young was probably raised in the Illuminati. Now, on the radio show, she talks about her father as being a journalist / news producer who was censored and ultimately run out of the business. That's what she said. But it's a fascinating interview, and I highly, highly recommend listening to it. So it inspired me to get more guests on my show, because I do enjoy interviewing people. So this Friday, I'll have somebody else to listen to besides me. All right, let me just do a quick scan of the news here before I say goodbye to you on this post-eclipse Monday. Let's see if there's anything else out there in the world that you absolutely, utterly have to know about. We can't live without. Let's see what we got here. Anything else? Let's see. Not much. The only other story of interest is this young guy who he was in a high school, I believe, in the South, and he got into a debate with I think it was like North Carolina, I suppose. He got into a debate with his teacher about Obama, and she basically, threatened him. And threatened him because he was being unfair to Obama and not being respectful to Obama. It was crazy. Other than that, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of news, and it's happening all the time. What I would do is, if you want to get into something interesting, go to Ustream and check out the live streams from Chicago with NATO. And again, the big news around Chicago and NATO is not what's happening now, but what is going to happen in the days to come, in the aftermath of NATO, when all those people will still be there. Okay, that's it for today's show. I want to thank everybody that listened, everybody that was in the chat room. I want to thank Erica for putting up these shows on YouTube, and you can find them on YouTube. And they're up on YouTube just hours after these shows end. You can check it out there. You can listen to us there. Okay, thanks again. Have a great Monday, a post-eclipse Monday, the epoch eclipse, and you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step in what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to the Monday Mashup, and I'm out of here. I'll see you on Wednesday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.